Alright. Commentary start. We got a souped up Papalymo, we got Ida, Y'shtola, Minfilia, who does not use soul breaks, and Alphina, who uses a lot of soul breaks. But, I'm not sure he actually needs to. I'll get to that later. Papalymo's disgusting. I got both his USB 2 or USB 1 and his Arcane. I've had Ida's USB for a while. I think I got it on a Realm on Parade. Y'shtola is just needs her BSB. In fact, her BSB is pretty good for the fight. It is just as annoying as it always was with that whole Stone Skin thing, but it turns out that the fight is well suited for her Stone Skin because there's some really powerful mega attacks, 2 of them to be exact. And being able to, you know, get rid of a lot of the damage that they deal with that Stone Skin shield is really nice. Minfilia, while she doesn't use Soul Break, she still uses a relic in this fight, and that is her LMR2. Yeah, her LMR2. Which is awesome. And really the pull that I was given the other day really hit hard. 3 out of 4 relics that I pulled are pivotal parts of this Sub30, and they don't happen without them. Even Minfilia's LMR. It's pretty vital for her to get going what she gets going in the beginning. Alright. For Papalymo, he's got his Arcane Rod. Get him with Terra's BSB for armor, and there's a reason why I'm using Terra's BSB, even though it's a bracer. Normally, I'll default to using better pieces of armor, like for defensive statistics, and I do have them. But I purposely use something with worse defensive statistics on Papalymo, just so I could have him take more damage at a single certain point in the fight, which I will get to when it happens. Let's see that Papalymo has the Wind and Fire resistance accessory on. This is a pretty important accessory for the person in the first slot, because the 2 slots in the fight that take a more wind damage than everything else is 1 and 5, and the 4 slots that take fire damage in the fight are 1, 2, 3, and 5, where there's 2 fire attacks. One is 1, 2, and 3, and the second fire attack is 1 and 5. So the first position gets hit with a lot of wind attacks, gets hit with a lot of fire attacks. Add on to the fact that Papalymo has his End Fire by that point to take even less damage from fire attacks, and he is the perfect tank for that position. And it's necessary, because if I'm unable to take those fire attacks at that point in the fight, then Y'shtola isn't allowed to slow cast her Asylum out and get it off in time for one of the gigantic attacks in the fight. I would need to have the Asylum off before the second fire attack, where I want it off after both of the fire attacks. So it's my Stone Skin bubbles are primed and ready to go for that tank. What's it called again? I can't check. Whatever. We'll just call it a Mega Attack. We'll get to it when it pops up on the screen. Papalymo has a Protectka. In order for this to work out the way I wanted to, Tank Purge, there you go. I needed to cast Protectka with Papalymo, and that's why he needs to use Terra's BSB as his armor. Because by a certain point in the fight, the boss uses a Geo Crush, which is an earth attack. And I need Papalymo to take enough damage from that Geo Crush to pop his Stone Skin bubble, to make him take damage for the extra 50 Soul Break points, because I don't cast an ability, or a damaging ability with Papalymo on first turn, so his Soul Break generation suffers for a single turn. So that is all linked. The fact that he generates that extra 50 soul break points from getting hit. And you'll see that when it gets to that point. Chain Faraja, of course, it's the strongest fire ability, and no one else is using any fire abilities for fire black magic. So, shit, why not? Give him Chain Faraja. And I use every single Chain Faraja over the course of the fight, I think. I have 7 or 8 of them. It's an R4. Papalymo's dived. I don't have any cast speed buffs on this team, so the most beneficial thing that I can do to a DPS that has no cast speed buffs would be to give him Thunder God mode. Papalymo is the king DPS in the fight, Thunder God mode. And, you know, he puts it to use. Ida does give herself cast speed buffs, lots of them, which means that even without Thunder God mode, she is able to chew through 9 hones over the course of the fight. She uses 3 5-star abilities, or sorry, 3 abilities to get up to her USB, and then uses 6 after that. So, my choice in what to do with Ida is use 1 ability once, and then 8 of the 6-star Fire Monk abilities. Fire Iron Fist. I could choose to do a lot of things with that 1 attack for her at the start of the fight, but what I chose to do instead was use Meteor Crush. I think it's the first time I've ever used Meteor Crush in an important fight. Because the 50% attack, even though she's already over soft cap, does grant her 22.5% increased damage, and, well, that's better than anything, or for 20 seconds after it's cast. That's how long the buff lasts. It's a 50% attack buff. Out of 10 on what scale? Versus Magicite, versus Torment, future prospects. Gotta provide some context. So I chose Meteor Crush because it adds up. It adds to her damage after the first turn. It's actually pretty nice. Since she doesn't do a whole lot on the first turn anyway. Because the deployment tactics that Alphino is going to cast isn't up, so she doesn't even have any buffs up yet. So she is below soft cap at that point anyway. Anything else going on for Ida? Her USB provides her with 3 charges of Monk instant cast, giving her cast speed buffs kind of pointless, since she does almost everything instant anyway. So giving her 30% damage with fist weapons equipped is just a good call. Ida takes a single hit of fire damage in the fight. I don't care that much about the earth damage in the fight, so because Ida gives herself End Fire and reduces fire damage naturally to herself, what I did instead of giving her a broad spectrum resist, I gave her the Final Fantasy XIV Wind Resist accessory. So it's a stronger than moderate resist because it gets synergy and it buffs up the amount of resist. So she defends against both fire, for that single fire attack because of her End Fire, and she strongly defends against wind damage. Which is helpful because that allows me to use Meteor Crush. If she didn't have the wind resist on, then I would have to use Fires Within on her to heal the first turn, because the boss's second turn is a strong single target attack on the second position. And if she wasn't strongly resisting wind damage, then she would get killed. Because, as you're going to see, I think I've done it in every commentary, like for the last 3 commentaries. This is the let's see how much damage we can take before we actually have to heal the party game. And I made a real nice game out of this one because it's a real mess, the resists that you need to use in this fight. But I'll show you that when that turn comes. Just turn 3 for Y'shtola. Y'shtola Heiska, because I don't have a Heiska on the team. My buff is coming from Alphino, which is just a super soul break deployment tactics. And Wrath. Because the one turn in the fight that she uses Wrath, I wouldn't benefit much from using any heals on that turn anyway, so might as well get some soul break points out of it, which she uses very well. And it's official. One of the first legend dives that I did, and I regretted for so long, has finally come to fruition. Y'shtola's legend dive is on display in this fight. Congratulations, Y'shtola. You are a mature cat girl now. And she gets Mako Might necessary. Because she needs USB, or she needs a BSB. It might as well be her USB. It's her best soul break. On third turn, and she can't do that in any other configuration that I run. Next up, Minfilia has a bunch of protective gear on. And she has Major Earth Resist on, because Major Wind is taken, and she does not take any fire damage in the fight. So the only two elements I care about are Wind and Earth. There are no Wind and Earth accessories, so I just gave her Major Earth. I don't know if it's really all that useful. This is the least priority spot on the entire fight. But hey. And you see she has her LMR equipped, essential. Lionheart. Does she really have Lionheart on? Yeah, I think she does. She either has Lionheart or a Striker. I don't think it matters. But she should be using a Striker. I think I took the screenshot of the wrong team. Because she's using Wrath, which means she will generate more soul break points from using a Striker. Because it would be 90 soul break points every time she uses Wrath, which is twice. And she gets increased soul break generation from using Entrust as well, which would exceed the amount that Lionheart gives, because Lionheart is only 25 extra soul break points every time she gets hit. But both work. It makes sense to use a Striker instead, in case there was ever a real conflict in her needing the soul break points. And lastly, we have Alphino in the last position. Don't have a wind weapon for him. Well, I do, but it's non-synergy. I do have a synergy 6-star weapon for him, and because mages have such a difficult time hitting their soft cap, I actually, for the first time in forever, use a weapon for the raw stats rather than the 20% extra damage. But I don't do so on his armor. I give him the 20% wind armor because he's got a nice piece of armor. Boy, is that Fusion jacket really aged well. There we go. I think I got it about 2 years ago. 1.5 years ago. 1.5 to 2 years ago. And it's still running point on me in the hardest content in the game. Alphino has Major Wind Resist on. The reason why is because, as I said, wind damage hits the first position and the fifth position the hardest in this fight. The only time that I would have rather had something else would be for fire damage. And there are no more than just that one fire and wind resist. And I need that on first position on Papalymo. So Alphino gets the second best thing, which is Major Wind Resist. And he needs it. You'll see. Like, everybody needs the resist that you get. Except for one person. I think I have 4 people at, like, lower than 5% health. Alphino, my beautiful son, is Legend Dives because he's awesome in Magicite with his Super Soul Break, and he's awesome in the Torment with his Super Soul Break as well. And he has Mako Might to get it out on first turn. Here's the interesting part that I forgot to take a screenshot of, so I'm going to have to put it back up on screen. is the Magicite. Alright, in the first position we have Belias. The reason why? Well, none of the other stuff that I use really makes sense. Fanfrit would be fine if I needed it. But however, the prospect of sub-30ing this boss without Belias' 10% increased fire damage is really slim. I think everyone would just have to double cast for the entire fight, which is not something I would have ever want to sit through. So he has 3 level 15 empowers because I had well-leveled 4-star Magicite, so why not? And they help out Papalymo and Ida. Moving on, we have Fanfrit's entry. I talked about briefly. Rather than Belias' increased fire damage, Fanfrit's entry is a fire stone skin, which would be useful in the fight. Because the boss does have 2 consecutive turns of some pretty heavy fire damage, followed by, on most runs, is probably going to be the heavy attack. So I think Fanfrit would actually be a good Magicite to use as your primary for a lot of teams, just to help you deal with that fire damage on those 2 turns. So you could go against the tank purge with full health bars and not get wiped out by it. So that would be a different way to run it. However, I run it a little differently. Fanfrit, I need for the 2 dampen fires, and the spell ward and the resistance boon are all used in this fight very well. How critical is the RS? RS like on relics? Krista, I use for Dampen Wind. Dampen Wind, Blade Ward, and Defense Boon. It's basically a 4-star version of Fanfrit. Could be improved within a week when the 5-star Ice Magicite get released, and I use Mateus instead, which will just be a more powerful Magicite that does about the same thing. Oh, Radiant. Not critical. The Radiant itself only does about 100k. It's the buff that does more. The reason why is because Ishtola's Stone Skin canceled out a lot of the damage that I get, that I receive. So Radiant gets reduced a little bit. But still, a first turn, 30% buff to the entire party that also just happens to deal 100,000 damage. Again, deployment tactics showing that it is one of the best super soul breaks in the game. Third, we got Sylph for Dampen Earth. And this is kind of going into the whole modular Magicite thing, and that's why I really wanted to talk a lot about my Magicite here, even though I don't have to talk long about it, thank goodness, is that I use a single Magicite for 4 different purposes. 1, empower fire. 2, dampen fire. 2 or 3, dampen wind. And 4, dampen earth. And running with the Magicite decks that I use would all plug in perfect Magicite to work on this team because they're modular. There's a single Magicite, and each single Magicite has a single purpose. And you see it on Fanfrit. Heavy, dampen fire, and 2 nice passives. And that would work the same way for Mateus, which is 2 dampens, Blade Ward, and another passive. Sylph would be Adamantoise, who would be 2 dampens, and I believe Defense Spoon, and then another passive that I'd have inherited. And then finally, Evray, who is here for a single magic boon. I only have 1 magic boon to the party. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a way to plug in another. I probably could have put one in that slot on Krista instead of using the second level 5 Dampen Wind. Yes, it would be definitely Kevin. And I'll actually talk about that when we get Stone Skin, when the fight starts. Because I wouldn't have to be so weird about some of the decisions I make, because I try to make my team take more damage at some points, simply because I want the stone skin to go away so people start generating soul break points again. I think I could have put in another magic boon on Krista, but I didn't have to. And I didn't want to try, because what if I needed that dampen? And you'll see that it does come really, really close. That I may actually need that level 5 dampen. Which I don't suggest doing, just going out and making a level 5 dampen to throw on a 4-star Magicite. That was inherited from a Fenrir. I think a level 80 Fenrir from 3-star. You know. And Krista will carry on the torch when Krista inherits that level 10 dampen wind over to Mateus. But obviously much more effective. Because level 10 is the highest amount of dampen. Yeah, and that's just a really powerful Magicite squad. I don't have any wasted slots here. Yeah, alright. So we can close that. And I think we can start it up. After we talk about the first turn. First turn is obviously... I designate the left-hand ability most of the time for my first turn, which you'll see here. Papalymo, Ida, and Ashola all use them, which is Protectica, Meteor Crush, and Heiska. Minfilia uses the RW for Chain, and Alphino uses Soul Break Deployment Tactics. And I'm sure this is intentional, but the boss takes its first turn and allows, at the time that ATB triggers for everybody, which allows me to get off all my actions before the boss's casting animation is done, which is real kind of them. Thank you, because it's Papalymo's. I'll talk about this very briefly. Papalymo's turns in this fight are of utmost importance. Every single time his ATB comes up, he needs to cast immediately. No exceptions, because not casting means I lose tons of damage, and you'll see that at the 25-second point in the fight. This is a dual cast. Yeah. Awesome. Extra 7,500 damage. Everybody seems really hurt. And they are. Okay. I hold this Asylum. Because if I cast it right now... Let's just get this right thing off the screen. If I cast Asylum right now, then it will go off before the boss's... not next attack, but attack after. I want to... I engineered the party to survive the next 2 attacks. Because in doing so, I save myself a ton of healing, and that's necessary to allow Y'shtola to generate enough soul break points to use 2 more Asylums over the course of the fight, because she needs to use both of those Asylums to defend against the tank purges. So what I did there is I held it until after Papalymo's casting animation went off. And I want to use it at about 5.65 seconds. It'll vary depending on the fast acts that you have in your team. I have a single level 5 fast act on Sylph. So that's one boss attack. Ida's dual casting, but Papalymo doesn't do it much. You see, boss hasn't acted yet, but Y'shtola has a full cast bar. There, we did get a dual cast. Bam, right there. Perfectly timed. Okay, yeah, there is no way I would be able to not use the level 5 dampen on Krista. Because Papalymo is basically dead. If someone breathes on him, he's going to fall over. But there we go. I've taken as much damage as I can on, about 4 people, and we get the asylum off, and we're ready to go. And an entrust to Alphino. This is where I get my extra damage over the course of the fight. I do not have to entrust to Papalymo or Ida at all. Because Ida attacks, she gets 3 charges of instant cast, so she generates a lot of soul break points. So after she uses her initial USB, well, she's completely self-sufficient. And Papalymo is the same way because he has Thunder God mode on. He attacks really quickly. So over the course of the fight, he has enough to use his USB once, and then he has enough to use his Arcane. So the way that I was able to increase the amount of damage that my party did was by entrusting to Alphino, because he has slow soul break generation, since he has Mako Might, and he spends the first turn of the fight generating no soul break points for 2.5 seconds casting a soul break. And using his USB here means that I do not have to use his USB a second time. And that's kind of important. And some of my attempts, some of my previous attempts, I had been using Alphino's USB after this point, the cast happened after 15 seconds. If your cast for a finisher USB happens after 15 seconds, then it needs to be recast in order to trigger the finisher. But because it's going to be cast, or the cast time starts now, but it completes before 15 seconds, that's the important part, then the finisher will trigger naturally, and I don't have to touch it again. So I can do other things. Okay, here's that 10-second Geo Crush that I was talking about. Notice, let's frame step back a second. Because I use Protectka on Papalymo on first turn, Papalymo does not have enough soul break points to use his USB on this turn, and he has to. He must. Not using his USB here would be a complete loss of damage output. So, on a lot of my attempts, until I made the adjustment, this Geo Crush that Ultima Weapon uses right now was completely absorbed by Y'shtola's Stone Skin, which is harder to work around than you think, because not only does the different resists and stuff that you use matter. I purposely don't want to use Earth Resist on him, because Earth Resist automatically means that it doesn't do any damage. But the health boons that you use matter, because the amount of health that you have dictates the size of your Stone Skin bubble, and that would make it so I wouldn't be able to do this. So it was kind of tough moving, equipment and stuff around to make this happen. But this Geo Crush happens the same time that Papalymo's ATB comes up, so it is perfectly timed. And I made it so he usually doesn't take 68 damage, but he takes 68 damage here, which makes him generate 50 soul break points. And you'll see his USB pops up and I'm able to cast it. Ida's still double casting. I don't do Sub30 commentaries. Again, as usual, Papalimo. The way the run and the turns work, his ATB must be uninterrupted. Every time his turn comes up, he must be able to cast. So there's our Belias, and here I do something kind of weird. Normally you would think that the lowest priority turns go to Minfilia, since she's just a slow and trust bot, but in order to get the amount of Soul Break points that I need, I actually need to chain here with Alphino, even though I just cast his USB, and I would get a lot of damage by using Dark Veil 4. I just can't. And it makes sense, and it'll make sense for the last 3 turns of Alphino's fight. Alright, Ida's got a USB. Now she's gonna be insta-casting all over. I did a 0 Wrath and Trust to Alphino. This is to make up for the fact that he is, wasting his turn by using a chain here. And as you'll see, it allows him to cast another Soul Break 1 turn earlier. And in doing so, because that Soul Break is his USB 2, it allows him to use the 2 charges of High Quick Cast on his USB to get off 2 actions before the end of the fight. Now, had I chained with Minfilia instead, this would not happen. I would still be able to heal the fight fine with Y'shtola, but Alphino would no longer be able to make 2 actions after his USB 2. Which is important, because the way Brave modes work is they start out with 2 charges right now. So, it's like Alphino's USB 2 is made to work with the new Brave buffs, because he gets 2 charges of High Quick Cast with it. The first charge of High Quick Cast, Dark Veil 4. Second charge of High Quick Cast, Brave mode. Or Brave command. And then that's the end of this. Papalimo doesn't do a whole lot of dual casting. Ida, with her RNG, carried it. That was almost a fatal error. Let's look at that again. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor all that well, but normally I want my cursor ready to go and spamming where the ability I know that's going to pop up needs to be clicked. The cursor is in the middle of the screen. I forgot what I was supposed to do on Y'shtola here. I don't forget why or how, but I probably spaced out like I normally do. But this is almost a fatal error. Because Y'shtola's turns are pretty important here as well. It took me way too long to go and cast that Tetragrammaton. Alphino uses Dark Veil 4 once, and after this 1 Dark Veil 4, he can cast his 3rd Soul Break, thanks to the support that he's gotten from Minfilia. That's an important Geo Crush. Because Alphino has survived miraculously, which will allow Y'shtola to get off another Asylum here. and start defending against the tank barrage. I believe that is Papolino's second and last dual cast. And you see, Alphino had the soul break points to use his USB 2 here. That's why it was important that he used the Realm Chain. Because he is unable to do that if he uses Dark Veil 4. And Minfilia uses the Chain instead. I had to pause here. Well, I'll go back to that. The reason why is, you see Minfilia's ATB? Thank goodness Minfilia is slow. God, she is molasses. I think she has like a 124 speed. Because if she gets ATB first here over Papalymo, then this run's dead. Because she spends too long inputting her action, and Papalymo spends too long sitting there with idle ATB, that he is unable to do what he needs to do on next turn, as you'll see. And I was so worried about it, I was just spam clicking the right position because I knew that it needed to be that or the run was over anyway. And this is it's hard for me to not appreciate this enough, but you'll see here that I just got an Entrust off with Minfilia. The Entrust is going to complete at about the same time that Y'shtola's next ATB comes up. And that is completely essential. It needs to be cast immediately, and yeah, you'll see that too. Just the timings in this fight were just so incredibly exciting. And that's why Y'shtola uses a Tetragrammaton here, even though everyone's at full health. Because she needs those 50 soul break points from the burst command. And she needs to not do anything else because her ATB needs to be up as soon as she gets that burst. Because there is another tank approach. Here's Alphino's USB 2. Honestly, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. That was with End Wind. That did 40,000 damage. Had I used Dark Veil 4 instead, same amount of damage. The reason why I used it is for the 2 charges of High Quick Cast and the Brave command. Believe it or not, Dark Veil 4 has a higher multiplier than the USB. You see, Ida cast her USB last turn. She has 3 charges of Fire Iron Fist left. It works out perfectly. Oh shoot, we just missed like the most important part of the fight. See, there's 24.09 seconds left. 24.65. Well, what happens at 25 seconds? Papalymo loses Thunder God mode. And if he loses Thunder God mode, then he loses an action. Or if he loses Thunder God mode and then inputs his action, he loses an action at the end of the fight. Losing at least 50,000, or no, not at least 50,000, at least 90,000 damage because of the chase and the Chain Faraja itself. That is why it is just insanely important that he never, ever, ever has any delay over the course of the fight. Because, as you'll see, he doesn't even have his ATB yet, and there's only 2.25 seconds left before the timer runs out. So let's frame step and see how close this really is. And I can't actually do this on screen or on stream most of the time, because on stream I have a higher input delay because the streaming itself is processor intensive, so it slows down my emulator. That's why I couldn't actually record this on stream, or I couldn't get this Sub30 on stream. Because, wow. We've just input the action at 24.96 seconds. So it will cast at ×3. And that allows him to take an extra action at the end of the fight, which is an important one, because it is 300,000 guaranteed damage. The chain is just so high now that everyone's capping without any effort at all. And Ida, again, with the double cast. I think she had like 4, no, at least 5 in the fight. So, after casting the USB-2, Alphino has now used Dark Baleful once. That's 1 Chargeify quick cast. Now he gets 1 more action to close out the fight. Minthilia's fight has ended. Oh, that's Alphino's finisher. It went off naturally, 50,000 extra damage. It's not strong for a USB. I think Papalymo chases 50,000 damage in a turn at this point, but it's still 50,000 damage. Alphino's soul breaks are not strong, but he has so many that are at least above the point of usefulness that makes them all worth using, and all of them together kind of makes him a really valuable character in a weird way, even though she doesn't have that strong stuff, besides his chain, which is disgusting. Or his BSB, which back in the day was one of the best mage soul breaks in the game. So Minthilia's battle is done. Really what I'm doing with her now is hitting defend so I can input other people's actions. That's it. And here's that Asylum. But watch what happens right after the Asylum. This is at 27.53 seconds. 27.6 seconds and give his tank purge. Fight would have been done. Done. DED. And that is why that little delay I talked about earlier, where I had the cursor in the middle of the screen, I forgot about what action Y'shtola was going to input, and then finally chose the right one with the Tetragrammaton. Had I been just a 0.07 seconds slower, this would have been a dead run, because I would have died to this instead of that Asylum going off. You gonna dual cast again? Okay, he didn't. Didn't on this one. Here's the Brave command, which at a 220% chain is 12 hits at about 60, let's say 6,600 per. And he double casts it. That is the slap in the face double cast, because your Brave charge resets after you cast it the first time, so he gets off a single 10,000 hit. It's pretty good. You know, if he had dual casted Dark Baleful instead, would have done the same thing. The reason why I play the fight like this and use all of Alphino's soul breaks, and this is kind of important for everyone out there with like kind of a similar team, but maybe not the incredible amount of soul break points that I've lucked myself into for Alphino. This stuff isn't necessary on him. Dark Baleful is strong. I only use it twice. It's strong. It's really strong. It's powerful. His burst command is really strong. But in order for those to match his soul breaks, he needs to have some pretty good dual cast luck. The reason why I ran the fight like this is because in order to get the dual cast luck that Alphino would need to to make this run possible, I would be sitting here resetting for weeks, where I really only sat here resetting for a couple days. Because this fight was that, you know, was that tight. By focusing Alphino's like strength into his soul breaks instead, it made it less RNG dependent. Because the amount of damage that Brave Command does is constant. There's nothing else I could have done over the course of the fight that would really change that, other than maybe dual casts affecting the chain count. That's it. But I actually tested out before I started this commentary. Alphino, instead of using his USB 1 and USB 2, using his BSB instead, and not using Dark Veil 4 at all. And the damage output was comparable. Maybe not as like quite as high, but that's because I wasn't dual casting. And the reason why is because the ability for him to instantly cast makes up for a lot of his damage loss using the Brave Command. And in doing so, I don't have to make that entrust in the middle of the fight to him too. So it makes Y'shtola safer as well. So for all you out there that think, oh, there's no way I can do this, I don't have either of Alphino's USBs. I don't think they're actually necessary. I think his Super Soul Break and BSB are just fine. They're really, really powerful. His BSB being as, like, it was game-breaking when it first came out because of the fact that it could instant cast, and there were no ways to grant party, you know, quick cast, insta cast back then. It was crazy what him and Sid Reigns could do. It is aged very well because there still are fights where you're unable to provide any sort of quick cast or instant cast to your party, like this one. So him being able to use that instant cast command is actually still really powerful. And, you know, if I can capture a run doing all of this, using his BSB instead, I will. I will, because I think it's awesome. And here we have the end of the fight at 29.75 seconds. And I want to talk about this for a second, because a lot of people are going to ask, because I usually am a proponent for doing it, is that you want to cast your soul breaks when you have cast speed buffs, because soul breaks take so long to cast. Because his last action executes at 29.75 seconds, it wouldn't matter if I used his arcane during the Thunder God mode, because it wouldn't remove enough cast time to allow him to take one more action in the fight. So the reason why I use his arcane last, even though I don't have cast speed buff at that point, is like say I swap their spots. There's two very big reasons. One, there's no way I get his arcane off in the 0.3 seconds that it needed to be off, because I would need to click through a menu to get there, where I can cast Chain Farage instead. And the second would be that at 25 or 24.97 seconds, he still has his USB buff active, or his USB status, which allowed him to chase on his Chain Farage, adding on, and that at that point in the fight, his chase is stacked up to 8 hits, and they were hitting for what, over 6,000, so an extra 40,000 damage. If I cast his arcane first and then a Chain Farage after, it wouldn't have that extra 40,000 damage. And that may not look like a lot, but on a boss with 2 million health, this is still a very close fight. So that extra 40,000 damage is pretty damn useful. That's why I wait. And at 29.75 seconds, bosses. A lot of things needed to go right. It's not like insane RNG. Like I said, I didn't have to spend long after I found out the team that I wanted to use, because I removed most of the RNG from Alphino. Ida's awesome RNG made up for Papalymo's average RNG. If Ida didn't dual cast as much as she did, I'd want Papalymo to dual cast more. Yes, this fight definitely required above average RNG with the dual casting. Y'shtola requires no RNG, thank goodness. All of her dual casts mean nothing, but her increased healing does, and that's why I say that her Legend Dive was worth something, because the Legend Dive provides a lot of increased healing. From her Legend Materia 1, and the 9% increased healing inside her dive, and the plus mind. All of that is necessary, even though the dual cast is not. So, any comments on this incredibly difficult run? Just looking at the team comp, seeing if there's anything else that I missed. Oh, you'll see that the formation is staggered. The reason why is everything physical in the fight is ranged, so there's no row anything in the fight except for Ida being in the front row because her USB isn't ranged, or actually her monk ability isn't ranged either. It was back when I used Fires of Within, but I don't anymore. So the reason I staggered them is so I can better see their ATB bar. So if I had Ida in the back row, let's just use that as an example, then for a lot of her casting animations, she would obscure Papalymo, and that was creating a lot of resets because my inability to see Papalymo's ATB bar meant that I didn't know when his turn was coming up exactly, and as you saw, I can't afford that. So, it does help to take a look at the way bosses deal their physical damage, because if everything's ranged, then you can get funky and symmetrical. No, I don't regret any of my healer dives. Not anymore. I did with her for Y'shtola, because for a long time she was just a mediocre healer, because like right after I dived her, I didn't use the global advantage enough to realize that, oh shoot, wall just doesn't become useful anymore, or wall doesn't become useful to have on a native caster, and that's the reason why I originally dived her. I was like, well, I'm not doing any fight without wall, but then, oh shoot, Magicite arrive, and oh, I can wall every fight with RW. And then Torments, oh, you automatically get wall. Great. So Y'shtola sat on the bench for a very long time, but finally, her dive was very much necessary for this fight. Do you think you're going to be able to sub 30 or at least sub 49? I don't know. I think, well, at least sub 40, yes, absolutely. Sub 30, maybe. So what I'm going to do with Final Fantasy IX. You're absolutely right, Numa. I could not replicate this on my phone because I don't have a very powerful phone. And the input delay would make the run impossible. I actually tried. Because a lot of the time, when I make these runs up, it's me waking up, I'm not a morning person at all. I'm sure a lot of you are, a lot of you out there are like this. I basically roll over when I wake up, pick up my phone and start messing around with it. You know, check my Discord and stuff like that. And a lot of the times, that's when I get thinking done. I'm like, oh, man, what other things could I do? And it's the winter, so it's like, you know, 60 degrees Fahrenheit in my room, and I'm like, I don't want to get out of my covers, so I'm going to start messing around with my Magicite or my Torment teams now. And what happened was I came up with this team, and I started playing it out, and I got pretty close at the end and saw that, you know, I couldn't, just like I had been doing on stream, that there's no way I could have gotten Papalymo's actions off in time. So I was like, all right. I rolled out of bed, put a bunch of layers on, and sat in front of my computer and hammered out the run. There are some phones, as Numa points out, that have a lot less input lag than even my emulator. My emulator has a lot, especially when I'm streaming. But on some phones, they really, really handle the game well. And I don't know what they did recently, but I have not gotten a single 60 frame per second run in so long. This game is, it's beautiful to look at sometimes, but it is kind of funny and sad at the same time to realize how unoptimized it is, and it just runs like shit for a lot of people, including me, on every device I have. I think one of the problems is this is a web-served game. What we're doing is it's not running native. A lot of the stuff isn't running natively. We're being served web pages to view. At least I believe that's how it works, and that's why performance is pretty dependent on your browser specifications, I believe. Yeah, I wish we could force 60 frames per second. The game is beautiful, but it used to happen like once a week. I haven't seen it in the past month. So, I don't know what they did, but it is, unfortunately, seems to be gone. I think the iPhones do run better. Yeah, and you know what? That probably has a lot to do with the fact that they have a different browser backend. Maybe. I don't want to. I don't want to say anything definitive because it's not my area of expertise. I believe this game runs off of WebKit, and it's based upon that amount of rendering that you have on your phone or whatever. I'm actually running OpenGL mode on Nox. DirectX mode didn't work that well for me, but I'm going to give DirectX version a try later to see if that makes things any better. Because I had compatibility issues when I was running DirectX instead of OpenGL. Yeah. One in 6 fights. Damn. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll give DirectX mode a try soon. I didn't want to try it out while I was doing these runs, because I didn't want to. I guess that doesn't matter. I can always just switch it back. Okay, well, I'm done. Unless anyone wants to keep talking about it, I will gladly keep talking.